Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for another episode of Clean Water Casting, brought to you by FloridaRightToCleanWater.org. We are the folks who are behind the effort to amend our state constitution, giving all Floridians a fundamental right to clean and healthy waters. I'm Joseph Benazia, Communications Director. In these podcasts, we talk to experts who can help us understand water and water-related issues in Florida. Today, our guest speaker is Sam Van Leer. Sam is the president and founder of the Urban Paradise Guild in Southeast Florida. He started the organization in 2008 to fight the climate crisis through projects that make life better for the people and the wildlife of that region. Sam, thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so tell us, what are you seeing firsthand where you live regarding climate change?
Well, Miami is considered to be ground zero for climate crisis. And so we've gone from climate change seems like it's coming at us to, oh crap, it's here. So I've lived places that got salt water in the street during king tides, which are natural seasonal high tides, but our infrastructure was built for lower sea levels. So we get salt in the street. That's one. Another that's deeply concerning, no pun intended, I swear, is that our freshwater aquifer, which is the source of our fresh water, can be intruded on by salt water, which spoils it or causes it to have to be processed before use to remove salt. And so Miami has always been at ground zero, but we're feeling it. Temperatures, of course, are extreme, although that's not unique to us. But having climate index days over 110 is the new abnormal for us, and it's pretty rough to fight climate crisis while being impacted by climate crisis, but that's where we are. Then there's coral bleaching. The reefs offshore are being killed by overheated water in many cases. And so when the heat goes over a certain threshold, the coral polyps eject their symbiotic algae, and then the polyps tend to die. So then there's, huge problems with fish kills. We don't have the same magnitude of algae blooms that are being experienced elsewhere, but we're experiencing our version of it. And combined with the higher temperatures, we have a lot of fish kills that happen, a couple a year. And the Biscayne Bay is just, it's in rough shape. And so we have this confluence of problems that are all creating sort of a perfect storm that combines pollutants in the water, climate crisis, and just massive urban area. I mean, it's pretty spectacular that we're an urban area, a megalopolis with wilderness in the center of it, Biscayne Bay. Just we've abused our wilderness. So it's going to take a lot of work to mitigate a lot of those impacts, and it's only going to get harder. So climate change is here, and anywhere you look for it, you will find it if you know what you're looking for.
All right, so I know that UPG has done a lot of work with wetlands. How soon after you started the organization did you get into wetlands? What sort of projects have you done? What's the connection with the climate crisis?
So I did found the organization to take on climate crisis, and mangroves have always been part of our recipe. And so I started experimenting with mangrove planting before I founded the organization. But starting especially in the spring of 2009, we started to collaborate with Miami-Dade County DERM, which is the environmental resource arm of the county government. And we did volunteer-based planting inside Oleta River State Park and red mangroves. And so I had a lot to learn. We got a lot done. We planted in that summer over 7,000 mangroves, and we've revisited those just recently, and they look awesome. It was real kind of white knuckle situation for the first 2 years because the seedlings are very vulnerable to being wiped out by a storm. But once they were thoroughly rooted and they started to send out crop roots, then it was good. And now they're big. Now they're 20 feet tall or more, and very, very safe. So now they're capable of protecting coastlines.
That's pretty spectacular results, if you ask me. You started this not all that many years ago, and now you've got a significant mangrove forest offering to people and wildlife protection.
Yeah, so mangroves are the go-to tree for South Florida for saltwater ecosystems. And so the shoreline in South Florida, naturally, anywhere that's not a beach that's getting pounded by ocean waves, it's probably going to be mangroves naturally. And so they provide just all kinds of vital, what are called ecosystem services. One is that they naturally filter water. They'll remove pollutants from water. They'll absorb nutrients. Another is that they're a really vital estuary. It's where young fish are born. And something like 70% of our seafood and game fish are known to require mangroves at some point in their life cycle. And that doesn't include predator-prey relationships. So, most people in Florida know what the mullet is, referring to the fish and not the haircut.
Mm-hmm.
And damn near everything eats mullet in the bay. And so mullet and other bait fish require mangroves. So predator-prey relationships mean that those relationships go way offshore. And even fish like the Goliath grouper, which is the biggest grouper of all, used to be called the Jewfish. Mm-hmm. They get huge, they hundreds of pounds, but they start life in the mangroves. So when you plant mangroves, it's like planting fish. And so, everything that needs fish, whether it's predator fish, dolphins, ospreys, bald eagles, other seabirds, and of course, all the other fish, they all got to eat. And if they are carnivorous, then they're eating what's coming out of the mangroves. So it's really vital. And then in addition to that, they've always served as this protective layer on the coast during major storm events. So there's a common misunderstanding that they'll stop the water from coming through. That really isn't such a thing because it takes a lot of linear distance in mangroves to do that. The thing that they mostly do is absorb wave energy. They take the brunt of the storm. And a mangrove forest during a hurricane strike is a very, very tough place to be. But, most survive. They absorb the wave energy, they break it up so that instead of those waves hammering directly into the shoreline, they're being broken up and disorganized by the mangroves. You might get storm surge. That doesn't just get stopped, but they can stop the wave energy. And that's the kind of stuff that destroys infrastructure. So as long as you have mangroves between you and the storm, you're in safer condition. And then beyond that, when it comes to just specifically fighting climate crisis, mangroves are considered to be one of the ultimate carbon capture trees. So just the tree itself, it can capture something like 1.5 times the carbon that a comparable tropical hardwood tree would capture. Then on top of that, the ecosystem that they create around themselves, the swamp, the mud, captures far more carbon. And so it's really vital on just all these levels. And so we love to plant them, but they were wiped out in most of Biscayne Bay and northern Biscayne Bay, which is where we do the majority of our work, by development. And so figuring out how and where to plant them is not easy. But we're still on that, and we have other things in our sleeve too. So we're discussing new ways to plant mangroves. We're testing new ways of planting mangroves at higher elevations, which is technically not possible because of how they grow. They need their feet wet. And so if you plant them at too high an elevation, they tend to dry out and die. And obviously, that's not functional. But our objective is to develop new methods to plant mangroves at least a foot higher than current elevations allow, current methods allow at that elevation, and so that we have mature mangrove trees in place by the time climate crisis really hits us and higher sea levels really hit us. So what's going to happen is the rate of red mangrove recruitment is kind of slow. And, a propagule sprouts on the tree from a seed. Then the propagule falls off the tree and it's already effectively a baby tree, even though it doesn't have roots. And so in nature, it'll float around until it finds a place where it can take root. And then if conditions allow, it eventually becomes a tree over the years. But we don't have time for that because the rate of sea level rise, I believe, will soon be faster than the rate of natural mangrove recruitment. And what that means is that the babies, the seedlings, will not have a chance. And so we need to get ahead of this thing. So creating these additional, what I call green defenses to protect our community from climate crisis is essential to what we do. And, in South Florida, water is everywhere. Even, no matter where you are, you're not far from water. And whether that's surface water or bay water or the Gulf Stream or the aquifer that's right underground, we're surrounded by water. And then, of course, the Everglades going further west.
Well, much of what you say certainly strikes a chord with me. I live in Cape Coral here on Southwest Florida. I've got a few hundred acres of wetlands behind my home, as do everybody else on my street. A lot of those are mangroves. We did get hit full force, Hurricane Ian. We did get flooded. I had about, I don't know, 10 to 12 inches of water in my house. But we maintain it would have been significantly worse if we didn't have those mangroves. And right now, when we bought down here, we were told, don't worry, nobody's ever going to develop on that property. Well, now we do have the threat of development. They want to build on, over 100 acres there. And so, whereas you're building these green defenses, we want to hold on to the ones that we have as best we can.
Yeah. And so when you add together the value of the mangroves for the ecosystem services side of things, the protection of human life and infrastructure, and the carbon capture, even on land that is privately owned, those mangroves really need to be protected. It's also worth noting that land that floods now is going to be, it's going to take a massive amount of work to turn it into buildable land in the short term. But in the longer term, it is impossible. We really should not be building anything along the coast anymore unless it's really vital to the way that we live. Um, Otherwise we are setting ourselves up for a huge fall. So, of course, property insurance rates are going through the roof. A lot of people cannot afford to own a home anymore just because of the insurance rates, and that is completely a function of water. Just it's 100% water, and that's what a lot of people don't get. That the thing that takes the most human life during a hurricane, it's not the wind. The winds are bad, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the water, the flooding that drowns, the waves that bash. Um, and so we need to protect those green defenses wherever we can, and factoring what those are worth. They're worth far more than a development will ever be worth. And so having mature mangroves that have stood the test of time, that's a beautiful thing. Having ones that have bounced back after a hurricane, I mean, they look rough, but that's their job. And, so from my perspective, yeah, I see the damage that a hurricane does, but I also see the beauty of things working the way Mother Nature intended. This is their function, this is their role. And frankly, if anybody tries to build on those mangroves, what's going to happen is eventually, inevitably, a monster hurricane is going to come through and wipe it out. And then they're going to be right back to mangroves, only starting at zero. And so throwing away those decades of growth, because I mean, a mangrove on a high energy coastline, during a hurricane, it's a tough place to exist. But
Mm-hmm.
they break, they heal, they grow. It's also kind of amazing to see an area that sometimes it's literally flattened, it's wiped out, but within a year you've just got a carpet of seedlings that are reaching for the sky. And that's how Mother Nature is.
Sam, I know that UPG has been a supporter of our Right to Clean Water constitutional amendment for quite a while now. Can you tell us why?
Well, first of all, what we do is we take on the battles that we believe strategically are important to our mission. And the right to clean water is one of those fundamental needs that has been abused in South Florida or Florida wide. It's been terrible. And so a lot of the problems that we are having today are because we were not aware of what was being lost. And we were chasing short term profits as a society. And Miami's famous for land booms, and Florida overall is, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So when a developer wants to get richer and a developer wants to plunk down money to, shall we say, persuade political elected officials to do their bidding, it tends to be very persuasive.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost so much. So, just looking at Biscayne Bay, the amount of mangroves that we've lost conservatively in northern Biscayne Bay, we probably lost 95% of our mangroves. Probably more, but I'm being conservative. And so we really just need to think twice about all this, and we need to have guardrails built in that prevent these abuses, because abuse is inevitable. We know it. It's human nature, unfortunately. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're in the position where the people with the deepest pockets and the shallowest morals are calling the shots. And it's bad for us, and it's bad for our future. It's bad for every kid who lives in Florida. So, yeah, it strategically aligns. And then again, because water is everywhere, and water and climate in Florida, especially in South Florida, are irrevocably linked. You can't separate them. So the water will come. The water is coming. Let's make it clean water. Do we want to live in a toxic swamp? Well, no, we don't. And so we need to be thinking, this needs to be like playing chess. We need to be able to say, okay, what's this place going to look like with an extra foot of sea level? What are we going to do about that to make the transition graceful and as minimally destructive as possible? Well, one of the ways you can start with that is to prevent heedless coastal construction. And if our bodies of water have rights, that's a step in the right direction. And we need it. I'm just tired of trying to play catch up with the damage. We've had 100 years and more of development, and we can't keep up with the new damage. Must let's heal the old damage.
Right. So just to clarify, the amendment gives people rights to protect those super important waters, the wetlands, and that sort of stuff. There is a rights of nature movement too, which is super. Lots of great stuff is happening there.
Sure. Well, to me, once people value water on that level, once we have our human rights to that, then we can assert the natural rights quite easily. Again, they're irrevocably linked. We can't live without water. I'm drinking it right now. It's one of my favorite beverages.
Sam, thank you very much for spending time with us today. We appreciate it deeply.
My pleasure. And we are recruiting for climate apprentices now. So anybody in South Florida should check out our website, urbanparadiseguild.org, and look for apprentices. We're hiring, and it's partly supported by AmeriCorps. So thank you to all the U.S. taxpayers who are helping us on that level. We do need to have more funds to match those funds, though. So it's an exciting time for us. This is what I founded UPG to do, and I wish we'd been able to make progress sooner, but we'll take what we can get. So here we are. We got to deal with what we got, and so we take it on head on.
Sam, thanks for all you do. Everybody, we'll catch you on our next episode of Clean Water Casting. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.